Okay, this is really interesting. NASA astronaut returns with terrifying information about Earth. Now, John Glenn, Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, they all had something to say. And they all say that space smells like steak when they come in and they take their spacesuits off after a walk. They say it smells like steak, cooked steak, or metals, metals are what's in the blood. And I've shown there's nothing but biology out there. Now, these guys, well, I'm going to let it play and you tell me what you think. All right, here they go. They're out in space, and what do they see?
One trip out there and witness the mesmerizing cosmos with our own eyes. Maybe sometime in the future, we might be able to do this for real. But outer space isn't a very safe or comfortable place. Humans know very little about the universe and what lies out there. In the past, many astronauts have encountered some unexplainable and downright terrifying things in space. And even with the modern and much more sophisticated equipment and knowledge, astronomers are unable to provide a logical explanation for these objects astronauts witness and other strange experiences. Here are the 20 creepiest things in space seen by astronauts. Number 1. Snaked in space. Franklin Story Musgrave is famous for being the second astronaut to have participated in 6 space flights. Besides that, he's also a physician and an esteemed public speaker. His experience can speak to his credibility. It would be hard to assume that the accomplished astronaut would lie about something so unsettling. According to the 87-year-old retiree, Musgrave claimed that he saw a snake in space. Like many of his colleagues, he reported that he observed the strange phenomenon multiple times.
Like many of his colleagues, they saw what they thought was a snake in space.
2 of his missions, Musgrave saw a snake about 6 to 8 feet in length. He described it as being elastic as it seems to have internal waves in it, and apparently the snake followed them for quite some time.
Oops.
Franklin further said that the more time you spend in space, the more you see an incredible amount of things there, and this leads...
All right, let me just say something. I'm going to stop watching this right now because the snake in space is enough, because I'm going to show you that everything out in space was alive at one time. Comet 67P is a tendon anthesis. Oumuamua Oumuamua is a finger. Shown this very, very, very clearly. And if anybody can stand in front of me and say I'm wrong, as an astronaut or a physicist or even a doctor, I'd love to have them do it. All right, here's Comet 67P. They landed a lander on here. It was called the Philae lander from the European Space Agency. Followed this inside and out. I have the spectral analysis on the particles, Kenneth and Juliet, that they tested. And it's 100% biological. It's all organic. This is a tendon anthesis. This is the red blood running, turning into, dust. This is a muscle attachment. These are the tendons. And that's the abrupt transition. That's Comet 67P. They say that, yeah, it's, as far as they can tell, it's all biological. And I'll show you where the blood vessels come. There'll be no smoke coming out of here, but all the blood vessels that service this tissue will be gassing off as the sun hits it, and so will this big artery. See, this goes back to 2015. There's nothing boiling off of here because there's no arteries and veins in these anchors. These little dimples are just in there so that they can lock into flesh. And this would have been where it was locked into right at this height. These are like anchors. Now, why is this gigantic one coming out and then these little bitty ones are all over the place? They're everywhere. Well, the ones that are everywhere are blood vessels. Blood vessels service small regions of tissues. And every single tissue has to be serviced. This is a different issue. This is an artery. Arteries mean all the blood comes down and then it divides off into all these little service areas. And that's what we're seeing here. That's a biological tendon anthesis. All right, I've shown this extremely clearly. This is the joint of a finger right there. This is the tip of the finger. It still even has some of the fingerprint skin on here. is the grip skin. That's real tough stuff, highly keratinized. Underneath you have an apical tuft, which has all these tendon little straps coming out of it. This right here, follow that down, you see? All these little spots down here, that's what's in bones. Bones anchor tendons exactly like that, you see? That's where all these bones, these little holes are. Alright, and then there's another one down here, all these little holes down here, because you've got to anchor an anchor. And so you can pull. Down here is where, right at the knuckle, where it goes over the knuckle, are a vein and artery. Check the architecture, take your time. Look at these two little spots down there. Those are the tendons that run right over the top of your knuckle. And that's what lets you do that. I have a couple of meteorites here that are both completely saturated with blood. Kentucky meat shower was an incident over a period of several minutes between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. In 1876, where chunks of red meat fell over this guy's property. Chunks of meat, I mean big ones, sometimes some of them the size of your hand. One guy ate some, he said it tasted like elk. There is nothing but biology that I can find that exists anywhere. The Earth is made of 100% biology. Even the moons are made out of biology. 100%. Everything I found. Everything. The sun, I'm sure, is made of biology. It's burnt up now because it's spinning and so dense and heavy. But at one time, that was some form of a creature, I believe. I know, it sounds insane, crazy. But if you go back to the ancient myths, every planet was a god. And guess what? They were immortal, so they're still around. Alright, where did all these things come from? Well, New Testament, the Christian Bible, Book of Revelations, describes a war in heaven between angels led by Archangel Michael against the dragon, identified as Satan, who will be defeated and thrown down to earth. This may have already happened. Alright, there's dragons all over Earth. I've found tons of them. This fish is being attacked by this gigantic dragon. Sounds crazy, but it is true. This is a fish. These are his scales. That's his fin up there. Alright, there's his tail back here. It's like a gigantic fish. His eye is right here. This, I'm not sure what that is. But here's his eye, his scales, his fin. This is the dragon up here spitting down at him, trying to kill him. This was an event that was a battle. No question about it, it was a battle. This stuff coming out of this dragon's throat. Alright, I'm not going to dig deep into this. This was Revelations. The dragon was thrown to earth. Typhon was a dragon that was... Alright, I'm just not going to bother going into this at all. This is the fish, this is the dragon, this is the dragon's throat, and here's the dragon's scales that run down the dragon's throat, all the way down the dragon's throat, until it was cut with a great and mighty sword. You see this? And here's where it was cut right here. And there's where it bled out in the desert. And this green is because blood creates the greenest green you ever saw. And it's out here in the middle of the desert. It's green as the green can be. And that's because it was cut through here, bled out the red blood and the black blood. This dragon runs all the way from his nose here and his red flared eye all the way back to the other side of Africa, North Africa, way over here. Here's the dragon scaled tail way back here. And it goes even further. It runs way out here. It's got a flail on here, way out to here. So this is the kind of creatures we're talking about. There was giants in the heaven, there was giants in the earth in those days, and then later there was more giants. The ones that are in the earth are the earth. The ones that were later were miles tall, some of them. Dragons are 1,000 miles long. And the one on the east coast is the same thing. It's Quetzalcoatl. We all heard about him. Nobody ever thought it was real. There he is right there. There's his head. He goes all the way up the East Coast. And there's his feathers just poke right up the top of his head right here. Showed this in a video the other day. It's totally clear. There's no question it's real. And here's his wings and everything. It goes all the way up to the East Coast, all the way up into Canada. And here's his beard. They all have a beard. And then look at this. This is his throat. All that snaky looking river stuff running down his throat. Like I say, I showed this very clear. And here's the feathers up here that are the Green Mountain. Well, there's Green Mountains way up. But look at the mountains. They're just totally saturated with green because green comes from feather meal. Feathers create extremely green stuff, just as blood does. So this revelations could have already happened. I have some other things to say, to think that possibly it is, as it has already occurred. Instead of way down the road it's going to happen. I don't know. These are things that should be discussed.